It was just an ordinary afternoon in Manila. The sun was low in the sky, glowing orange and gold. The light stretched across the busy streets, making long shadows of people rushing home. Jeepneys honked, street vendors called out, and the smell of roasted peanuts and fried food floated in the air. Everyone seemed busy, walking fast, trying to get home before night. In the middle of the crowd was a man who looked simple and ordinary. He wore a plain white shirt, faded jeans, and simple shoes. His hair was short, and his hands were tucked into his pockets. At first glance, you might not notice him at all. But if you looked closely, you would recognize his face. He was not just any man. He was Manny Pacquiao, the boxing champion, the national hero, the senator, the legend. Even though he was very famous, Manny liked walking like this, just like a normal person. He smiled and waved at the few people who recognized him. Some people gasped when they noticed, whispering, "Is that Manny Pacquiao?" A few fans asked for selfies, and Manny kindly agreed. He was used to this. He never acted too proud or too distant. Fame had not changed him. He still wanted to be close to the people. But that afternoon, something happened that nobody expected. From the corner of the street, a frail and tired man appeared. His clothes were dirty and torn. His hair was messy and unwashed. His face looked old and weary, as if life had been very hard on him. His body looked thin, and his steps were slow, heavy, and unsure. He seemed to be fighting with himself, wondering if he should turn back or go forward. At last, he gathered what little courage he had left and stepped closer to Manny. His voice was shaky and soft when he spoke. "Sir, can you give me $1? The street froze. People around stopped walking. Some turned their heads in surprise. A few chuckled. Did he just ask Manny Pacquiao for $1? One man whispered. Another scoffed. Out of all the people in the world, he asked him? The millionaire, the senator? For just a single dollar. To many, it seemed funny, almost ridiculous. A world-famous boxer, who had earned millions in his career, was being asked for only $1. Surely Manny would laugh, or maybe ignore the man completely. After all, many celebrities were known to be busy, proud, or even cold. But Manny did not laugh. He did not look away. Instead, he stopped walking. He stood still and looked directly into the man's eyes. His face was calm, unreadable. The homeless man shifted nervously. His hands trembled, and he looked like he was about to turn and run. He regretted asking. He had faced rejection so many times before that he expected it again. He braced himself for mockery or a harsh word. But then Manny spoke. His voice was calm, curious, not angry. Why $1? The question shocked everyone. People leaned in closer, eager to hear what would happen. Why didn't Manny just give him a coin and walk away? Why ask such a strange question? The homeless man's lips trembled. He looked down, embarrassed, but then forced himself to answer. His voice was very soft, almost like the sound of wind. I don't need much, he said slowly. $1 is enough to buy bread. Maybe some water. That's all I wanted today. Just enough so I don't go to sleep hungry again. His words were simple, but they carried the pain of many nights of suffering. The people around shifted uncomfortably. Some frowned. Others turned their eyes away, unable to look at him. A man in a polo shirt muttered, "Why doesn't he just get a job?" Another shook his head and said, "Always asking for handouts." A group of teenagers laughed openly. Imagine begging Manny Pacquiao for $1. He probably spends more than that on coffee in the morning. They giggled and nudged each other, mocking the poor man. The homeless man lowered his head, ashamed. He had heard those cruel words many times before. To most of the world he was invisible, or worse, a problem, a burden. But Manny still didn't move. He kept looking at the man with quiet focus. His silence was powerful, and the crowd began to feel uneasy. Finally, Manny asked another question. "How long have you been living on the streets?" The man hesitated, then sighed deeply. His voice cracked as he spoke. 3 years. Since I lost my job. My wife, she left me. And my children, I haven't seen them. Some days I beg. Some days, I don't even try because people just walk past like I don't exist. Today I thought, maybe someone would listen. He quickly wiped his eyes, embarrassed to show his tears. The crowd shifted again. This time, some faces softened. A woman whispered to her friend, "I didn't know. He doesn't even want much, just a little to eat." But not everyone was touched. A man in a business suit sneered, his arms crossed. "Don't be fooled. They all have stories. He just wants money for alcohol or drugs. For the first time, Manny's calm expression changed. His face hardened slightly as he turned to the man. His voice was firm but not loud. Do you know him? Do you know his story? The businessman went silent. He had no answer. Manny's words carried weight, and the street grew quiet again. Turning back to the homeless man, Manny's eyes softened once more. You asked for $1, he said thoughtfully. Just enough to survive the day. But tell me, do you only want to survive? Is survival all you wish for? The man blinked in confusion. His hands shook as he clutched the strap of his worn-out bag. I don't know anymore. I just don't want to be hungry. Manny nodded slowly. He understood. Hunger was not just about the stomach. Hunger could crush the soul, make a person lose hope. By now, the crowd had grown bigger. People held up their phones, recording every word and every moment. It felt as if the entire world was holding its breath. Then Manny did something unexpected. He crouched down, lowering himself until his eyes met the man's. In that simple gesture, the gap between a boxing legend and a forgotten man disappeared. You asked for $1, Manny said softly. But I want to give you something more than that. I want to give you respect. The man's eyes widened. For years, he had been treated as less than human. People had looked at him with disgust, pity or anger, but never respect. His lips trembled. No words came out. The crowd was stunned. Even those who had laughed earlier now looked uneasy, shame creeping onto their faces. The silence was heavy. Everyone waited. What would Manny do next? Would he hand the man a coin? Would he leave after saying those powerful words? Or was something greater about to happen? From the back of the crowd, a man in a crisp polo shirt laughed loudly. Respect? That's not what he needs. He needs a shower and a job. His cruel words made a small group chuckle. The homeless man's shoulders sank lower. His hands trembled as he stared at the cracked pavement beneath his feet. He had been here before, mocked, dismissed, judged by strangers who didn't know his story. For a moment, he wished he had never dared to ask Manny for help. Another voice rang out, sharper, harsher. Don't waste your money on him, Pacquiao. They're all the same. You give them something, and tomorrow they'll be right back here, begging again. The homeless man closed his eyes. The words cut deeper than hunger ever could. He felt stripped of all dignity. His body shook with shame. His voice was tiny, almost like a whisper. Maybe I should just go. But before he could move, Manny reached out and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. That simple touch spoke louder than any words. It told him, you are not invisible. You matter. The crowd hushed again, waiting. Manny slowly stood, turning his gaze to the people gathered around. His eyes were calm, not angry, but filled with quiet strength. Why is it, Manny asked clearly, that when a man in a suit asks for millions in loans, he is called a businessman? But when a hungry man asks for $1, he is called lazy. The words struck the crowd like a powerful punch. People murmured. Some lowered their eyes, ashamed. The ones who had mocked earlier stood silent, their laughter gone. The homeless man looked up, his eyes shining with tears. No one had ever defended him like this. Not a stranger, not a friend, and certainly not someone as great as Manny Pacquiao. But even then, not everyone was ready to change. Some mockers stayed quiet, their lips tight, their arms crossed. They did not want to admit what Manny said was true. Yet in that moment, something in the air shifted. The people around could feel it. Respect, kindness, and truth had spoken louder than cruelty. A young man lifted his phone high, making sure he got a good angle of the scene. He muttered under his breath, "He's just doing this for the cameras. It's all for show." Manny heard the words. They reached his ears loud and clear. But he didn't frown. He didn't snap back. He didn't let the insult shake him. Instead, Manny calmly pointed toward the many phones being held up by the people around him. "If these cameras are recording," Manny said, his voice steady, "then good. Let them record. Let the world see this moment. Let them see how we treat the poor. Let them see how quickly we laugh at another person's pain. Maybe then, when they watch it, they will realize what must change." The crowd stirred. People glanced at each other, whispering again, but something was different now. This time, instead of mocking laughter or rolled eyes, many of them nodded slowly. Something in Manny's words struck a chord. What had started as a crowd watching out of curiosity, like they were watching some street show, was now slowly turning into admiration. People began to realize, Manny wasn't just defending one homeless man sitting on the ground. He was speaking to everyone. He was challenging all of them, people on the street and the thousands who were watching live online, to think about their own behavior, their own choices, their own prejudices. The homeless man, who had been sitting quietly all this time, finally spoke in a low, shaky voice. "Sir, I don't deserve your kindness." His eyes watered as he looked down at his torn bag. Manny bent closer so the man could hear him clearly. His voice was gentle, but it carried strength. "Every human being deserves kindness. Don't ever believe otherwise." The homeless man broke down. Tears spilled down his cheeks. For years, through cruel words, through harsh actions, and through silent rejection, he had been told he was worthless. Nobody cared. Nobody stopped for him. But in this single moment, Manny gave him back something priceless: dignity. The crowd buzzed with anticipation. What would Manny actually do now? Would he simply hand over a coin? A crumpled bill? Or would he walk away after giving a nice speech? People leaned forward, waiting. One of Manny's companions shifted nervously and whispered, "Let's go, champ. You don't need this drama." Manny's children, who were watching a short distance away, looked worried too. They didn't fully understand why their father was spending so much time with a stranger, a man everyone else avoided. But Manny stayed where he was. He didn't move an inch. His gaze remained on the homeless man. "This man asked me for $1, Manny said loudly enough for everyone to hear. But what he truly asked for was something deeper. He asked to be reminded that he is seen, that he is heard, that he matters. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. The same people who had mocked earlier now looked ashamed. Some nodded quietly, guilt written on their faces. The homeless man sniffled, still clutching his torn bag. "I just wanted to eat today," he admitted, his voice cracking. Manny gave him a soft smile. "And you will eat. But not just today." The crowd froze. Phones zoomed in, fingers pressed record, capturing every breath. Something was about to happen. Something bigger than a simple act of charity. Everyone could feel it in the air. The homeless man stared at Manny, confused. His eyes flicked from Manny's calm face to the bulge of money in his pocket. "Sir, what do you mean?" Manny slowly rose to his feet. His tall figure and strong presence commanded the entire street. The whispers stopped instantly. The whole crowd held its breath. He reached into his pocket. The crowd leaned in closer, eyes wide, waiting. Surely, he would pull out a single bill, maybe a small gesture to end the moment. That was what people expected. That was what usually happened. But deep down, many felt it. Something told them this wasn't going to be normal. Manny Pacquiao was about to do something far greater. If you had been standing there, your heart would be racing. You would be wondering, what is Manny going to do? The air felt electric, charged with excitement. Every eye was fixed on him. The homeless man's breathing quickened. He braced himself for the usual routine. A coin. A crumpled bill. Something tossed his way like a bone to a starving dog. He had lived this moment too many times before. But Manny didn't pull out money right away. Instead, he slowly crouched down, lowering himself until his eyes were level with the man sitting on the curb. The crowd gasped softly. This was not the stance of a rich celebrity towering over the poor. This was a champion humbling himself, meeting eye to eye with someone the world had forgotten. "Look at me," Manny said gently. The man hesitated. His head shook slightly, but then he lifted his eyes. They were bloodshot, filled with years of pain, rejection, and hopelessness. His lips trembled, unable to form words. "You asked me for $1, Manny continued. His voice was calm but strong enough for all to hear. "But I want you to know something. You are worth more than $1. You are worth more than what people see when they look at you." The man blinked rapidly, his mind struggling to accept what he was hearing. For years, he had been invisible. Now a man everyone recognized, a world-famous champion, was telling him he mattered. The crowd stood still, hushed, almost holding their breath. Even the people who had laughed earlier now leaned forward, shame heavy on their faces. A woman near the front whispered, "He's not just giving him money. He's giving him dignity." Manny glanced at the spectators, then back at the man. "Respect," he said firmly, "should not be given only to those with wealth or fame. Respect belongs to every human life. And today, I want you to see that you are not forgotten. You are seen." The homeless man's chin quivered. His voice came out rough and broken. Nobody has ever spoken to me like this." Manny gave a small smile. "Then let today be the first time." He reached into his pocket again. This time, he pulled out not one coin, not one bill, but a folded bundle of cash. The crowd gasped loudly. Some craned their necks, trying to see how much it was. Others raised their phones higher, desperate to capture every second. The man's eyes widened in shock. His first instinct was to push it away.
No, sir. It's too much.
I only asked for $1. Manny shook his head gently. You asked for $1 to eat today. But I want you to live beyond today. Take it, not as charity. Take it as a reminder that your life has meaning. The man's hands shook violently as Manny placed the bundle into them.
His chest heaved. For a moment, he couldn't even breathe.
The crowd erupted in whispers. Disbelief spread like wildfire.
Did he just give him all that? One man muttered.
That has to be thousands. Another gasped.
But Manny wasn't finished.
He looked around at the people watching and raised his voice slightly. How many of us walk past someone like him every single day? How many of us think they are less than us, just because they ask for help? The silence that followed was heavy. People looked at the ground, avoiding each other's eyes. The laughter that had filled the air earlier was gone. Now, the crowd felt only guilt and reflection. True strength, Manny continued, his voice carrying like a wave, is not measured by how many titles you win or how much money you make. True strength is measured by how you treat those who have nothing. His words sank deep into every heart. Even those who had mocked earlier now nodded slowly, humbled by his lesson. The homeless man clutched the money tightly against his chest. Tears streamed freely down his face.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. You've saved me. I can eat. I can. His voice cracked.
He could barely speak. Manny placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. This money will help you for now. But I want you to remember this. Never believe the lie that you are worthless.
Stand tall.
Believe in yourself. And when you are able, help someone else who needs it. The man sobbed openly now, covering his face with both hands. His shoulders shook as he cried. The crowd watched in silence. Many wiped away their own tears. What began as a simple request for $1 had turned into a powerful life lesson. One man in the crowd whispered to himself, "We came here to see a champion. But today, we saw something greater." The entire mood shifted. Those who had mocked felt ashamed. Strangers who had looked down on the homeless man now looked at him differently, with compassion instead of contempt.
And Manny? He didn't puff out his chest.
He didn't stand proudly to collect applause. He simply stood up, helped the man to his feet, and gave him a final nod of encouragement. The cameras captured every moment, the crouching, the bundle of cash, the tears, the words of respect. Within hours, the video would spread online, going viral. People all over the world would argue, admire, and be inspired. But right there on that street, the lesson was already clear. $1 had turned into something much greater. It had become a spark of humanity, a flame that lit up the hearts of everyone present. The homeless man clutched the bundle of bills against his chest like a lifeline. His body shook as sobs broke free, echoing in the heavy silence of the street. For years, he had been invisible, a shadow people stepped around. Now, standing before him, was a man he had only ever seen on TV, a legend, a champion, telling him he mattered. The crowd buzzed with disbelief.
Some whispered in awe.
Others filmed silently, knowing deep down they were witnessing something far greater than money.
And Manny Pacquiao? He wasn't finished.
He looked at the people around him and spoke a little louder. How many of us walk past someone like him every day? How many of us think they are less than us just because they ask for help?
No one spoke. The street went quiet.
People looked down at the ground, not wanting to meet his eyes.
They felt guilty.
The laughing from before had stopped. Now everyone felt heavy inside, thinking about his words. Real strength, Manny said, is not about how many prizes you win or how much money you have. Real strength is about how you treat people who have nothing. The words touched everyone's hearts. Even the ones who had laughed at first were now nodding slowly, ashamed of themselves. The homeless man hugged the money to his chest tightly. Tears ran down his face.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. You saved me. I can eat now. I really can.
His voice broke because he was so full of feelings.
Manny put a kind hand on his shoulder.
This money will help you for now. But remember this, never believe the lie that you are worthless.
Stand tall.
Believe in yourself. And when you can, help someone else too. The homeless man cried harder, hiding his face in his hands. The crowd stood in silence. Many of them wiped their eyes. A simple request for $1 had turned into a big lesson they would never forget. One man whispered softly, "We came here to see a champion." Then he added, But today we saw something even greater. The mood changed completely. The people who had mocked the homeless man now lowered their heads. The same strangers who had looked down on him now looked with kindness instead of hate.
And Manny?
He didn't act proud or wait for applause. He simply helped the homeless man stand up and gave him one last nod of encouragement. The cameras caught everything: the kneeling, the money, the tears, and the lesson. In just a few hours, the video would spread all over the world, sparking talk, admiration, and inspiration. But right there, on that quiet street, the lesson was already clear. One single dollar had turned into something much bigger, a spark of kindness that lit up the whole crowd. What happened next would not only change the people who had laughed. It would go on to inspire millions everywhere. The homeless man hugged the money bundle to his chest like it was his only lifeline. His body shook as he cried loudly. For years, people had ignored him, walking past as if he didn't exist. Now standing in front of him was a man he had only ever seen on TV, a legend, a champion, telling him that he mattered. The crowd whispered in disbelief. Some talked softly in amazement. Others recorded quietly, knowing they were watching something far more important than just a gift.
But Manny wasn't finished.
He turned to the onlookers and looked at each of them. His voice was calm but powerful. "You all saw what happened here," he said. "A man asked me for just $1. One. And how many of you laughed? How many of you judged him before you even knew his story?"
The words felt heavy. Faces dropped.
A few people lowered their phones, ashamed of what they had said earlier. The man in the polo shirt, who had joked about showers and jobs, looked down, unable to face Manny's eyes. Manny kept speaking. "We live in a world where it is easy to step over the poor, to laugh at the weak, to assume the worst. But how often do we stop and ask why? How often do we ask about their pain, their journey, their struggles?" The homeless man sniffled and wiped his face with trembling hands. Manny reached out and steadied him. "Don't hide your tears. There is no shame in asking for help. The shame belongs to those who see suffering and do nothing." The crowd murmured and nodded. Even those who had doubted were now moved, their faces softening. Manny lifted the homeless man's hand, the same one holding the money bundle, and raised it high for everyone to see. This man is not a beggar.
He is not a burden.
He is a reminder that any one of us could be in his place if life had gone differently. "So tell me, who among us is truly greater?" His words gave everyone chills.
Phones recorded.
Camera flashes lit up Manny's calm face. The homeless man whispered through sobs, I don't know what to say. You've given me more than I could ever dream." Manny smiled gently. "Then promise me one thing. When you get back on your feet, when you find your strength, help someone else who feels invisible. Pass this respect forward." The man nodded quickly, crying again.
"I promise.
I promise I will." For the first time, the crowd started clapping. It wasn't loud cheering like in a boxing ring. It was slow, heartfelt applause that grew stronger every second. The same people who had mocked were now clapping for the dignity of a man they once dismissed. But Manny raised his hand, asking for silence.
He wasn't done.
"You cheer now," he said, "but cheering is easy. The real question is, what will you do when you leave here? Will you walk past the next hungry man and laugh? Or will you remember this moment and choose kindness?"
The words hit hard.
They were heavier than any punch Manny had ever thrown. They didn't hit the body, they hit the heart. The businessman who had sneered earlier whispered, "He's right. We all walk past every day." A woman holding her child's hand leaned down and said softly, "Never forget this, okay? Always help when you can." The little girl nodded with wide eyes. The homeless man fell to his knees, overwhelmed. He kissed Manny's hand, weeping. "You saved me. Not just with money, but you saved my soul." Manny knelt again and helped him stand. No man should bow before another.
Stand tall. You have dignity.
Don't ever let anyone take that from you again.
The cameras flashed.
That single picture, Manny raising the hand of a forgotten man, would soon circle the world. But Manny didn't think about fame or credit. He leaned close and whispered to the man, "This is not about me. This is about you. Remember, you are worth more than you believe." The man nodded, still trembling, but now he stood taller than before. The crowd clapped again, louder now. Manny didn't bask in it. Instead, he looked around and gave one last challenge. If you believe respect belongs to everyone, don't just clap.
Live it. Show it.
Be the one who chooses compassion. This time the crowd erupted, not only in applause but in cheers of agreement.
People were touched deeply.
Some even took out their wallets and walked up to the homeless man. They didn't give out of pity. They gave out of respect and unity. Manny stepped back, letting the moment belong to the man.
He didn't want the spotlight.
He wanted the world to see pure humanity. The cameras kept rolling. The story of a $1 request had now turned into a global lesson about dignity, respect, and the real meaning of strength. Do you agree with Manny that real strength is about kindness, not money or trophies? Say yes, if you believe respect is for everyone. The street was now full of energy and hope. What had started as an awkward, almost cruel scene had turned into something powerful. Strangers who had laughed minutes earlier now stood side by side, clapping and nodding with respect. The homeless man still held the bundle of money tightly, his fingers shaking. But his eyes were different now. No longer sad, no longer dull from rejection.
Now they were full of light, full of hope.
Manny put a gentle hand on the man's back and helped him walk to a bench nearby. Sit, Manny said softly. You've carried a heavy load. Let's rest for a moment.
The man sat down.
He was still shaking and could not stop whispering the same words over and over.
Thank you. Thank you.
All around them, the crowd was buzzing with noise. People still held up their phones, recording everything. Voices whispered, "That was amazing.
Pacquiao.
He's unbelievable. This will go viral for sure." But Manny didn't care about the phones or the cameras. He only looked at the man in front of him. He bent down again, fixing the man's old shoes. He tied the man's loose shoelace like he was caring for a brother. The crowd gasped. People couldn't believe it. Here was a world champion, a senator, a man famous all over the globe, kneeling down to tie the shoes of a poor man who had been forgotten by the world. Then, one person in the crowd who had not noticed him before whispered, "Wait, is that Manny Pacquiao?" The whisper spread quickly, like fire.
Heads turned. Eyes grew wide.
Phones zoomed closer.
Yes, that's him, people said.
The people's champ is helping a homeless man. Oh my God, this is real. The crowd realized at the same time that this wasn't just a kind stranger. This was one of the most famous athletes alive. A man who had every reason to walk away.
But he didn't. He chose to stop, to listen, to care.
The homeless man heard the whispers too. He lifted his head, confused. His voice shook.
You're him. The boxer. The champion.
Manny smiled a little, almost shy.
Yes.
But today I'm just a man. The same as you.
The man's mouth dropped open.
Tears filled his eyes again, but now not only from pain. This time they came from awe. Why would someone like you stop for me?
I'm nothing.
Manny shook his head firmly.
Don't ever say that.
You are not nothing. Fame, titles, money, those things don't make a man greater. What makes a man great is his heart.
And you, my friend, have a heart that still beats, still fights.
That is worth more than all the belts I have ever won. The man sobbed again, hiding his face with his hands. The crowd felt deeply moved. Then they started clapping and cheering loudly. Some shouted, "Respect." The same people who had laughed earlier were now full of admiration, not only for Manny, but for the lesson he had just taught. One of Manny's assistants leaned in close, looking worried about the big crowd.
"Sir, maybe we should go.
This is getting too big." Manny glanced at the phones and the swelling group of people. He nodded a little, but before leaving he turned back to the homeless man. "Listen to me," Manny said gently but with strength in his voice. "This moment doesn't end here. Use what I've given you wisely.
Find food. Find shelter.
But most importantly, find your worth again. You are stronger than you believe." The man nodded, crying, holding the money with shaking hands.
"I will, sir. I promise. I will."
Manny held his hand one last time, then stood up tall. The crowd cheered again, louder than ever, their voices echoing down the street. People were chanting his name, not for a boxing fight, but for the fight he had just shown outside the ring. A fight for dignity, for compassion, for justice. But Manny didn't raise his fists like a champion. He only lifted one hand in a quiet wave. Then, humbly, he walked away into the crowd. The homeless man stayed sitting, still shocked. His life had changed in just a few minutes. People who once ignored him now came forward. They gave him food, money, and kind words. For the first time in years, he wasn't invisible.
People saw him.
And as the video spread online, the whole world saw it too. Not just Manny giving money, but something much deeper, a lesson that no one is too small for respect. And that true champions fight not only in sports arenas, but in the streets, where human kindness is tested every day. But the story didn't stop there. Within hours, the moment exploded all over the internet. By the time Manny and his team had quietly slipped away, videos were already everywhere. Clips showed every angle: the homeless man asking for $1, the crowd mocking him, Manny kneeling down, and then the gift of kindness wrapped in words of respect. Within an hour, hashtags were trending. Respect for all.
Manny the champion. The $1 lesson.
Videos spread across Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Each clip carried captions like, "This is why he's not just a champion in the ring." News outlets picked up the story quickly.
Headlines flashed.
Manny Pacquiao stops in the street to teach the world about compassion. From $1 to dignity, boxing legend's lesson goes viral. Crowd mocks, Manny Pacquiao responds with humanity. Comment sections filled with emotion. Some admitted their own guilt. "I've ignored people like this before. Now I see them differently. This video broke me." Respect should never depend on status. Pacquiao didn't just give money. He gave this man his life back. Even famous people shared the video. Athletes, actors, politicians, all praised Manny for showing what real greatness looks like. Everyone agreed, this was bigger than boxing. Meanwhile, the homeless man's life began to change. People who once walked past him now gave food, clothes, and shelter. Local groups reached out to help him find stability. For the first time in years, he felt human kindness surround him like a shield. But what mattered most wasn't just the help. It was how people looked at him now.
Not as a burden. Not as invisible.
But as a man, with a story and dignity. When Manny was asked later about the moment, he didn't brag. He didn't take credit. He just said, "I was hungry once too. I know what it feels like to be ignored, to be treated like you don't matter. That's why I will never forget where I came from." Respect is free. Kindness is free. We just need to choose it. Those words spread across interviews and articles. They became the heart of the story. They reminded people everywhere that compassion isn't about big gestures. It's about choosing to see and respect the humanity in others. Weeks later, the video was still everywhere, gaining millions of views. Teachers showed it to students in schools. Pastors and community leaders used it to spark talks about humility and respect. Even in government meetings, leaders cited it as proof that true leadership is service, not status. The $1 request had turned into a global lesson. And still, Manny refused to let it be about himself. He always pointed back to the homeless man, saying, "It started with him." He reminded us all of something important, that asking for help is not weakness.
It's human.
The homeless man, slowly rebuilding his life, agreed. In a rare interview, he said through tears, "I asked for $1, but what I got was hope. Hope that I am not forgotten. Hope that I can stand again." The story's impact spread far beyond that street corner. It showed the world that heroes aren't only made in stadiums under bright lights. Sometimes heroes appear when someone bends down to lift up a person who has been cast aside. And so, the lesson lived on. True champions don't fight only for glory. They fight for dignity. They fight for respect. They fight for humanity.